Today is 3 top interviews from the Jere Metcalf Podcast with 3 top but very different real estate agents on winning listings. We start with Matt Breitenbach, representing billion-dollar clients in the Hamptons. Then Caroline Bean, a top agent in Houston who has doubled her business year over year for the last 5 years. And last but not least, Seth O Byrne, not just a renowned real estate agent in San Diego, the country, and the world, he's a master marketer and conversationalist. In the segments of each interview today, we talk about how they win listings before presentations, how they execute their presentations, and their philosophies and actions that have led to their ongoing, growing success winning listings. Thanks for listening to the Jere Metcalf Podcast, where top real estate agents tell how they do it. This podcast was created for real estate agents across the country to come together, sharing ideas to take your, their, and our business to the next level. This is Matt Breitenbach.
Pitching, it doesn't always have to be when you're just in going to go get a listing. I believe heavily in broker relationships. I'm big into my spirit.
Yeah.
I'm a network guy. I'm a power-based network guy. I'm all about. I get hired a lot because of my connections. And when I'm going to go talk to in a sports entertainment sphere, I was on with a big guy from Rock Nation, big guy, VP, and I got to pitch him on why I'm the best partner for him for any kind of relationship, any kind of athletes or stuff he wants to send my way. So it's not just when you're going to get a listing, it's when you're talking to gatekeepers or influencers or other agents that you're trying to get referral business from. You're at go ahead.
When
you're at a conference or something, you got an elevator pitch. You got 5 minutes. We talked about, did we meet at this conference or whatever? When you're meeting those people and you're at a cocktail party with a bunch of agents, if that is an elevator pitch situation where you're like, all right, I have a few minutes with this agent, having a drink with them. How do I convince them that I'm if they ever have anyone in the Hamptons, why I'm so great and why they can refer to me? So
exactly.
I think
and being able to frame it.
It's not just going into a house. It's
I love it.
Anywhere, And
remembering that, one of my favorite things I learned from an agent in Atlanta, Burma Weller, who we just did a deal. Love Burma. She said this to me 10 years ago. She actually said it in a sales meeting at the company I was with at the time, but she said, you're always being interviewed, whether at a cocktail party, and even whether they know they're interviewing. Usually they know and you don't, but whether they know or not, they are interviewing you, because by the time they hire you, by the time it's time to hire somebody, they've already decided who it's going to be very often, which is how I get a lot of my business. So maybe I'm pitching and I didn't know it. I love it. But back to what you said is communicating in a way with people where you present the problem and the solution quickly for why you're the right person for them. So give us some examples of some great pitches or how you didn't see it one way and then you adjusted it, and the difference in your conversations and where that's taken your business and the business you're winning and doing.
Yeah, no, I totally, and I've been building these pretty cool pitch decks, which are basically lead behinds. I don't like to go through in front of the client, because then it feels like a science project presentation or something in school, right? You're kind of all right, well, in section 3 here, it has no flow to it. And
exactly.
I was talking to actually a Compass guy that does a lot of the how to pitch Compass presentations. He was out here, and he was he gave me an idea, what you mentioned early on in this conversation, was maybe you send it beforehand, which I'm I might start doing that, or get them to pitch beforehand, so they can kind of go through it. But
they already know about you and have the questions. That's what I love doing.
Even a lead behind, I get a good response because I kind of go into my pitch, and then I leave them the presentation aspect of it later, that if they're back, that was really cool what you're saying, and it all ties into what I was pitching ties exactly into the hard copy thing that I'm leaving for them to review later. It's all the similar concepts and stuff I'm speaking to, So I think you really got to know your pitch inside and out, no matter what it is, and knowing your brand, because it's going to be, as agents, you want to be having tons of conversations every day with all sorts of people. And you want to be able to know that brand inside and out, so you can kind of talk about it no matter who you're talking to, that you can,
So give us a little bit. We're trying not to do a Compass commercial, but it's really relevant to the interview, and I'm enjoying it, everybody. So y'all just apply it to your company, or, But for example, Compass is a newer company, so it's not this name that everybody's familiar with. It's new and scary. How do you give us an example of, and I would love whether it's, you're talking about VP of Rock Nation, or you're talking about brokers, or you're talking about a listing presentation or listing, whatever we call those. How do you set that up? Do you have an example or a story that you can give us where you came in and it went from you weren't sure they wanted to meet you to done deal?
I just had a really, the best pitch win I've had recently was I went and there's a lot of press on it. If you look it up online, with property 23 Suffolk Street in Sag Harbor, and it's an old
Wait, slow down. Say that again. Y'all talk too fast up there.
I do. 23 Suffolk Street in Sag Harbor. It's a Lanford Wilson house, and it was a really there was about 5 or 6 really top tier agents that got invited. I sold his interior designer house, so I got the call to go in there. And again, my graphic designer was like, I had basically like 36 hours to pull this thing together, and go in there. And this guy used to be the Secretary of State, for the UK. And
wow, yeah.
And this is I guess just to tie into a pitch story.
Yeah, but Secretary of State of UK means like pitching isn't even his favorite word. He just wants details. He wants to know you're competent.
Extremely analytical. Like if I ever go before British Parliament to get like the one-liners that work in the States don't work there. Like they're not having it. I looked at my teammate who came with me and I said, if I ever get like confirmed for a Senate seat or whatever, a judge sheet, like that's what it felt like. It felt like I was just like on this, and I have so much respect for him. I feel like just been dealing with him as a client, my IQ is raised like 5 points, but
probably
right. He's a very smart guy.
Right.
And, it was funny. Like we went in there and what got us the listing actually was we were realistic and we were direct, and we really had a really deep conversation with him. And I think we impressed him on our ability of our strategy. And we were actually the lowest priced of all the agent teams, which was really difficult at first, because we were like, oh my God, because when we first brought it up, they're like, what? And, another broker team went in there and said they were going to get them over $10 million, and it was going to sell quick and get a gazillion people through there. And it just sounded like broker talk. Right. And I think we had a really, I think my point is like, you have to really work hard on your strategy of the property itself. If you're going for a property pitch, look into, know your brand, know what's like, and just have a really, really like.
Well, I mean, like that is so impressive that you competed. I mean, by the way, I do know you're a badass.
Oh, thank you.
Major badass. So, I mean, it's not that impressive, but to go in front of someone who has that kind of background, that kind of property, and to go in with, to some people, a newer company is exciting and awesome, and that they're all in, but not usually someone with that background. And you're coming in with the low. Now, like, I'm almost going backwards, but when you presented that price and they were taken back, what did you think? Did you think, okay, maybe I was wrong? Or did you think those guys are full of it? Because you're pretty good at what you do, but like, what was your gut reaction to it? And how did that conversation play out into winning the listing and keeping the price?
At first, when I left, I had very mixed feelings. I was like, that went pretty well, but also I don't know like how it's going to take. It was almost like you kind of rolled a grenade into the middle of the room, so I was like, I was like up in the air about it. And what's really good on pitches, and this is, again, not to be a Compass commercial too, but like the fact that we have a CEO, like I emailed Robert Revkin about it. I emailed Rory Gallett, who's a GM in New York, and I was like, hey guys, can you just drop this guy a note? And he was also mutually impressed of my follow-up after the pitch. this is a follow-up business, and like, you know, my tenacity and ambition, like I think connects to the way I pitch to my brand, like, and how, like, it's one of those like values that connect to, I think, my brand. So he was very impressed by that too. Like my follow-up email to him too, about like, which was a lengthy email about just the whole, what we went over and some of the stuff. And he had a few additional questions, and then I kind of connected with two people, and that really was helping. Like I had swayed the needle to the pitch, but that was another thing I think that pushed it, you know, past the finish line to get the property, you know?
Wow. Well, I think a lot of people feel like they need to somehow figure out how to get a price. Like not everybody, but sometimes it's just give them a price that they'll say yes to, and then figure it out once I win the listing. And you did the opposite. You know, you came in with a price, and from there you established trust and respect.
Yeah. He was. I mean, he did. You know, he used to do communication for big politicians, and he was funny. He's like, and you know, it's funny. We actually have a contract out on it already, and it's only been on the market for a few weeks, and he's so over the moon, and it's happy when you have these experiences in real estate. Yeah. Like I'm just trying to say that there's this isn't all the times. It's not all roses, right? Like there's certain clients are upset, and you have properties for 2.5 years, but like this is just one that really work. But you know, he used to do communication and PR, so he's like, oh, this is the new realism, right? You have to be realistic pricing, and you know, not inflated and all this stuff. So he was like, you know, I think it all connects. It connects to like.
Well, that goes back. Yeah. That goes back to Chris Voss, and that's right. Like even in initially telling him something he didn't want to hear, he could relate to it through his own industry of new realism. And yeah, that's right. Like I get it, and you're on the same page, and that gets them off of the, you know, whole backed off whatever. So that is such an awesome story. So I want to bring us a little bit through all these processes with the pitch, but in talking about the story that you have, kind of, if you can, how much can you tell us about, okay, because you didn't send anything ahead of time. You came with your pitch stack. Well, you call it pitch stack. I call it my presentation or my stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But you showed up with it. You walk in the door. You meet the guy. You sit down. Like give us like a 5-minute overview of like, you meet him. Did you tour the house? Did you not? Did you talk about what, when? How did you present the problem and then the solution? And what was the frame? And give us.
I think most pitches I go on with a homeowner, you kind of like, it's usually a tour associated with the house first. They kind of want to show you the product.
Yeah.
And then there's the sit down, you know, hey, let's sit at the, you know, living room or the kitchen counter, or the you know, in this case we sat in his breakfast room, and you know, and do you want coffee? Do you want water? And, you know, like, you know, you kind of, I think
all that good stuff. Right. I'm kidding. Right. Yeah.
So there's that first, you know, that you usually go, that's what usually happens. What I've seen is that. And then when you sit down, you start to feel that a little bit like, all right, here's showtime. You're kind of stepping in. That's when you're kind of ready to, you know, most of it's small talk beforehand. And that's when you can maybe try to build a little rapport. And, you know, I always feel like you're trying to, you know, you want to get information to help build rapport with someone too. Like I like when I'm going through that tour, you know, okay, this is beautiful. This room is great. I see what you're doing. Like, all right, but asking them questions like, oh, why are you guys selling, or what's going on? So you can kind of get that information. Like I told you, like, I think in pitching, you're trying to understand, you have to understand it organically, kind of
the situation to understand the problem.
Yeah. I'm trying to get facts about who this person is and why they may be selling and what's going on. Cause it's going to help me also. It's not a devious thing. It's more about I'm trying to learn, like if I have to tweak my strategy that I originally came up with on the go, or it helps my brain's turning because I'm thinking, you know, on a different level about like the house itself, or maybe I see something in the house that I didn't see from the photos or never been through it. That's different. Like, you know, that might change my original asking price, or, oh, I didn't know that was that concept. So it all ties into to that sit down.
This is Caroline Bean.
I want people to want to use me, not to feel like they have to use me.
Exactly. So today we've talked about a little bit about, you definitely have a more strategic approach than I think a lot of agents, and just what you said, and you're not going after the business so directly at people you know just because you know them. So how do you, and I know you've got a lot of interesting things going on that you're going to share with us today, but how do you position yourself? How do you prospect? And what do you think your style and your strength is in winning that business, when I think the stereotype and the kind of subconscious belief of everyone is you've got to just go after everybody and be so aggressive. And you've been so successful with kind of the opposite mindset about it.
Yeah. For me, if I get asked to go on a listing presentation and I know that there's other agents interviewing for the position, I'm not going to go in there and sell everything under the sun to them and, say I'll do this for free or do that or help you do this. I want someone to hire me for our relationship that we're going to build together, and then also for my expertise in the business. So I go into a listing with the mindset that I'm going to show them everything that I can do for their home, previous examples of how I market my properties, and what their expectations of me can be. So, and if that works for them, great. And if they find another agent that walks in the door that promises things that they can sell their house higher when it shouldn't be that way, or whatever the case is, then that's fine. They might be disappointed at the end of the day. But again, this year has been really heavy set on listings, and most of them have been referrals. A few of them have been presentations that I've given where they have not gone with another agent. And one of the most recent ones was a call I got. I had sold a house down the street from the neighbor, and he had called me and said, I was going to go with this other agent, but I'd really like you to come over and I'd really like to talk to you. I see that you sold this house and I want to know more about Compass. And we went down there and had a great long meeting. By the end of it, he said, look, I really like you. I really like what you do. I'd like to give you the listing. And I think too, a lot of the times when it depends on what type of person you're working with and how certain people think, in terms of their, if they're a feelings thinker or if they are a business thinker. So it depends on that type of personality that you get. But for this guy, we connected really well. And I think when you sign a listing agreement, you're also signing up to basically interact and have a business and personal relationship with that person. So that has to click. And if somebody doesn't click with their agent in terms of trying to, be on the same page about values and in all of the aspects that go into selling or buying a house for that matter, then it's not going to line up, and you're always going to be butting heads about certain things. So I think having that initial connection with somebody is very helpful too. And I think sometimes that can reveals.
When you do, so on the listing presentation, and then I'm going to back up to everybody and get a little bit of a picture of your broader branding and marketing. But on that listing presentation, when you go to a listing, when you have a listing presentation, is it for you, is it I show up and have a conversation, or do you have a system and a process from they call and these action steps happen all the way to the meeting and after the meeting until they sign the agreement?
I pretty much handle every listing presentation the same way, even if I know I'm the only one they're interviewing and they just want me to come over and help them get their house ready. I always pretty much do the same. This has a great CMA and listing presentation that we can work with, and we can customize it however we need to. So I normally go in with our nice binder that has all of my marketing materials, the CMA for what I think the house should be priced, different ways that if I think the house needs a Compass concierge project, or if I think the house needs, anything to get it show ready. So I go in with all that information, also previous advertising and marketing materials that I think that they would maybe want to see. And then we go through the process of going through the listing presentation, and then everybody has different questions. Everybody cares more about certain things. Some people are really set on looking at numbers and trying to decide the price, and some people are more focused on marketing and advertising. So I kind of take the lead on which way they prefer to go. And I also like to try and make it yes, it's a business decision, but I also like to add a little bit of a personal connection in there too, because again, you could be working with this person, talking to this person every day for as long as it takes to sell the listing.
Something you keep saying over and over that I think is key is listen. You say, I listen if they're a feeler or a thinker. I listen, I follow their lead. Are they focused on pricing? Are they focused on CMA? So it's coming in and being receptive, not just coming in and throwing out a presentation and shoving it down their throat, but listening to what it is they really want to hear from you. And do you ever start that with, when you come in, do you come in with questions or do you, how that's kind of like, well, I'm going to back up first. Do you send anything before you get there? Or do you send an email or do you send a anything?
I typically don't send anything prior to, unless somebody asks me to.
Okay.
I always leave all the materials with them so they can digest it and then they can have more questions. But again, I really want everything to start off at our first face-to-face meeting. I mean, I know so much stuff is done via email and text in our business now, but I like that personal interaction at the beginning, and I think that's your first impression. So I always try to do everything at that first initial meeting.
That's awesome. So you go into the meeting. Is it kind of and I know I'm getting a little bit detailed here, but I think it helps everybody because I think you have a very unique approach to a lot of agents. And so I think I'd like to kind of dig deep because I think you kind of take it for granted. So I want to pull it out of you.
Okay.
When you go in, do you go in and ask questions? Or are you going in and how is that?
Yeah, I think it's always better to ask a lot of questions initially to kind of feel their initial reaction.
Yeah. And how do you know? Do you have like I kind of have a process of what questions I ask when.
Yeah.
So do you sometimes, and then there's shiny object syndrome, but do you have an initial question that you ask, or do you just kind of get in there and feel it out, or?
Well, a little bit of both. Sometimes some of the questions I ask are on that initial phone call, so I can be prepared to bring the right information. But a lot of them are just your typical questions. What's your time frame of moving? Why are you moving? Just the initial questions, so I can get a sense of where these people are. If it's a really exciting move, or if it's a not so exciting move for personal reasons, whether someone's downsizing or it's a divorce or whatever it may be, I always want to have an understanding of the situation so I can make sure that I move forward accordingly. But I do think that there comes times where I am having to ask questions that I wasn't, planning on asking. Sometimes I've walked into houses and I've been like, oh my gosh, this house needs a lot of work before it needs to get ready. And that's always a really hard thing to tell a seller is your house is not ready to show if they've spent time and they think it's perfect. So that is
my next question. Yeah.
That's where you have to preface it in a way is, well, a lot of the houses in the area that we're seeing selling at these prices have X, Y, and Z. And so you can only say so much without truly stepping over the line. So I think if most people are like, whatever you think will do, and it might not be their style and they may not want to paint or they may not want to do certain things. But I think as much as you can say, this will get you the maximum return on your house if you do these items, I think they appreciate it. I think if you start really picking apart their house and really saying negative things about their house, I think that's when it kind of turns in a different direction. So I think as much as you can say things and be as positive as possible will go a long way.
Exactly. And do you have any advice for that? Because sometimes I feel like no matter how positive I'm trying to spin it, I can just be blunt because I don't know how else to get the point across. And I don't want to, you don't want to, or I'm too nice and it doesn't get the point across.
I think just going back to saying the houses in your neighborhood or your area that are selling at this price point that you think your house is worth have all this, or they have an updated kitchen, or they have a landscaped front yard. I mean, things that you can pinpoint. If they say, oh, well, our yard is landscaped, well, then you have to maybe go the next step of saying, well, actually, this house has, X, Y, and Z, and yours is missing this. Yeah. So I think sometimes you have to kind of make it black and white And you never know, you might hurt someone's feelings, but I try and do it in a way that I am trying to make the house add value and not downgrade what they have right now.
Exactly. So listing presentation, this is kind of a cheesy question, but because sometimes we get set in our ways. Do you ever bring I've heard some people, like I've even talked to agents who bring the listing agreement to the presentation and like, let's get this signed and then we'll start talking. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And then that other guy, I don't bring it at all.
Some of the top agents in Houston are known for that. If they walk in, even if there are other agents competing for it, they walk in with that listing presentation and they say, I have everything signed, ready to go. Let's just be done with this. Let's sign it. I'll get it on the market in 2 days. And people feel pressure, and some people I have a hard time saying no. So I feel bad about hurting people's feelings. So I'm sure I'm not the only one out there. So if someone's putting something in front of you saying, let's just get this done, like this will be great, and really pumping it up, it's really hard to say, no, I'm actually going to continue interviewing some agents. And I've heard of that happening a lot of times. And I've heard of other agents in my office have gone on listing presentations against other brokerages, and they get a call saying, oh, we actually already signed with this person. They just made it really easy and they had everything ready to go. And I will never do that. That is not my thing. I think that is putting someone in a bad position. Going back to the beginning, I want someone to hire me because they want to work with me, not because they have to or they're being forced.
Or they're pressured.
Yeah. So
it's not a good foundation for a relationship.
Unless I know that person is for sure listing with me, it's a referral, they're not interviewing anybody else, I will not do that because that's not the reputation I want, and that's not the type of business person I am.
This is Seth O Byrne.
And so what I believe is the listing appointment is an appointment to see whether or not that person really thinks we're the right captain for their boat. Mm-hmm. And so I much prefer to get down and dirty in how we work, the philosophy of how we work, and the nuts and bolts of how we work. Choosing the price, I believe, is part of the marketing strategy. A lot of people go marketing's here and price is here, but marketing is just one. Like these are all these things. You got digital, print, broker networking, consumer direct marketing. Pricing is one of them. And so, in my personal opinion, why my listing appointment closing ratio has been so much higher in these last few years is I stopped letting price get in between me and the client. And I believe strongly that, all of us have been coached the opposite, that you need to make sure they're realistic sellers. You need to make sure that the price makes sense. Mm-hmm. I don't disagree with that. But if you know that their motivation is to sell the property and they have equity available and that they're actually motivated and dedicated to get it sold, if we start high, we start high. If we start low and try to create a bidding war, so be it. Really, I believe my job is to not only advise, but also do my clients' bidding. I work for them. And so if the property is really worth $2.5 million and they just go, Seth, I still want to list it for $3.2 million and see what the market does, that's a marketing decision. You want to test the market. And so I believe very strongly that if we have great rapport, if they know how hard I work, if I know that they're motivated and our interests are aligned, then we can list it for 3.2 because we're going to remain friends in 30 days if it doesn't sell, and we're going to reduce it down to 2.5, and then we're going to sell it immediately, and then we're all going to high five and go out to dinner.
And you might get lucky every once in a while. You might get lucky. We all get lucky. I've had listings where I was like, never will this happen, and it happens. And other listings, you're like, and I tell my clients too, your analogy is the best. Yeah. But it's like, hey, there are listings that people put on and they're like, this is going to sell next week. And 2 years later, they're on the market because you don't know what's to come. Exactly. You said sometimes the market doesn't care.
That's absolutely right. And I guess my feeling is not that every broker needs to not talk about comps in the listing appointment, right? There is something incredibly frustrating for a seller, for an agent to walk into the appointment and not talk about the one thing that they want to talk about the most. And
so how do you address that? Because you have such market knowledge, but go ahead, keep us going. You walk me through it, this process.
Absolutely. So, hey, back to kind of the shtick. hey, I came in here today and I'm going to talk about marketing. I'm going to talk about strategy. I'm going to talk about the general market. I'm going to talk about your neighborhood. Today is not a day to pick the price. You don't pick the price the first day you meet. And furthermore, most of the properties that we're taking listings on, we're either requiring or requesting that our clients do significant market preparation. So if it takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get the property on the market, it will be a different market by the time we're on the market.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for those sellers that say, Seth, I need it on the market tomorrow. Okay, sure, we're going to talk about comps. But for most of the properties where we're going to do staging, painting, carpet, landscaping, all that stuff, decluttering, and we're a few months out, I like to just talk in general ranges.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, as someone who's trying to win a job, not letting price get in the way of not allowing price to be something that offends the seller up front does give me a better chance of getting a listing. That's true. That's fair. But I believe in a stronger way that when you sit down and you meet with that person and you decide you just really like each other and you just really see eye to eye, you can do anything in the world with someone who you like, right?
And when you built that rapport with the client, they're going to listen to you.
Yes.
If you overprice it and it doesn't work and you maintain rapport, they're going to listen. If you don't,
absolutely.
I do talk about seller's amnesia. It's a real thing, but there are things that we can do to get around that, because there's also real estate amnesia, like keeping real estate agent, like keeping in touch with your client, communicating, saying the difficult things now that they might need to hear about the market, and making sure they do. Like back to what you said, is they understand from that listing presentation what you're doing. So the phone call happens, you have a nice conversation on the phone, they're selling the house to you, that gives you perspective. You shoot out the email. You basically relay, this is who we are, what we do, and show them alignment with that you've heard them and how you align with them. Then you show up for the appointment. Now, when you show up for the appointment, you walk in the door. Is there a home tour first? Do you sit down and go over the listing book, listing present? I mean, how does that walk us through? You're walking into my home, Seth. What are we going to do? What are you going to say to me?
Let's do
Welcome to my home.
I walk into that big 11-foot door in your circular driveway with the fountains and stuff like that.
Right.
I take the free puppy from one of the assistants and I take the free margarita waiting for me. So I walk into that listing appointment. And yes, the first thing I say is I kind of go back to, hey, pretend you're the real estate agent. Just walk me through the house. Show me the things you love. Show me the things that you're a little like self-conscious about that you think we should do something about that could hold up a sale. Walk me through this step by step, right? So when they walk me through the property, I use that as an opportunity to really dig deep on the property itself, right? So I start asking a lot of qualified questions that are really important. So, oh, wow, like I see you have concrete countertops. That's really unusual. What led you to make that decision and what do you love about it? And so I let them kind of talk about the things that are great about a house. I am one of these weird people that really believes that what you put into a house is going to strongly affect the sales price. Mm-hmm. Some agents think it's just all price per square foot. I have found in the luxury market,
I couldn't agree with you more. Mm-hmm.
It really matters, right?
It really matters.
If you have $2, $3, $4, $5, $10 million, you are buying an experience. Like I bought it. My second Panamera, I paid an enormous amount more just because I wanted different stitching on the seats. I didn't look at the Kelley Blue Book. I knew I wanted it. And now I don't have that kind of money to buy real estate in that fashion, but our clients do. And so, those little details really matter. So I like to dig deep into the details. What I don't do is point out obvious things. I think that really like belittles kind of the eloquence of our industry. I don't go, oh, I see that you have a wall sconce there. I'm not going to point out dummy stuff.
But that is such a common.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I see it all the time when I have listings and I try to just let the buyer see, and then the buyer's agent takes over and talks about the sconces on the wall, and I'm like, and the fireplace in the master suite. I'm like, are you kidding me? They can see that. Let them experience it. But that's a whole nother. Shin Schultz has a great interview, by the way, on that, everybody. Really? Oh my God, a great interview on not doing that and why. But back to just relating to what you're saying. So they give you the tour, do the tour of the house.
Yep.
They tell you that, so you're really giving them a chance to express themselves. So you can align with them. It's kind of like, listen to them, and they'll tell you what there's so much we can tell them.
Yeah.
But this gives you a chance to really understand where they are and what their needs are. So you go through that. At that point, sit down, or what happens next?
Absolutely. And I think there's an important nuance difference between letting questions run a meeting. When you do ask questions, yes, you are in control. You are steering the meeting. But the difference between, I think, the MFO, like the Mike Ferry organization style questions, those are used specifically to get you to your goal of getting the listing
and to your goal as a listing agent.
And that's exactly right. It's a very self-serving way to use using qualified questions. I'm asking qualified questions because I actually want to know about the house. If my job is to market the house, I need to know what makes it special. And I find that saying that a home is special and talking about the special things is value in and of itself. The end buyer might not care about the bidets, but the fact that the seller went to the trouble to put bidets in this property might actually impress a seller, or a buyer. I mean, how many times do you sell properties with elevators and the sellers think that it's the greatest thing ever, but they haven't used it in 20 years. And the buyers think it's really cool because they can tell people at cocktail parties they have an elevator, but they're never going to
use it either. You're exactly right.
Use it either. So it's good to know. I don't always think that every amenity has to have an obvious purpose and be totally usable. There is, again, in luxury real estate, there's some things that you just kind of want, like I paid 10 grand more for my car because I have yellow calipers on it. You know what I mean? And the stitching is even more.
What are you going to do with that stitching, Seth? You're going to know you have it, and you're going to look at it, and it's going to be
exactly.
Pretty.
I'm going to go, hey, I made it in life. I got the cool stitching.
Right? Exactly.
I'm going to call my mom. Hey, I got the stitching. So anyways, so I like the questions to guide, understanding the property. Now, of course, I'm going to use what they said to touch back to it in my listing presentation, and I'm going to use those to start emphasizing how we're going to market the property, right? Mm-hmm. If there's an amazing pool that has a lot of history. Or has a cool aesthetic, maybe in the pool or maybe in the videos, in the photos, we're really going to showcase that pool. Maybe in our text, we're going to write a lot about that crazy pool and the grotto features and the architecture. If it was home of the year, we're going to talk about that. If it was a famous architect, we're going to dive deep into that. We're going to interview the architect on the video talking about the property. If it was historic, maybe we bring a local historian in and we have them talk about it. So while I'm asking these questions, I'm starting to understand key qualities about the property that are its unique selling features. I'm gathering data in my head for later when we sit down at the kitchen table, what we're really going to dive into. Mm-hmm. Craig Sewing, who runs a local TV show here now, and he's now gone national, opening up this real estate TV show in major markets all over the country. Oh, wow. He taught me a term, which was not his term, but it was a term that stuck in my head, which is passion beats content. And
passion beats content.
And the simplified version of what that means, to me at least, how I understand that saying is, if you're really crazy excited, people are going to be excited that you're excited. And what's even crazier is if you're excited about their thing, whether it's their house, their car, their luxury goods, their art, everyone wants an advisor who loves their house. But you can't BS it, right? We all know these agents that'll walk through a house and they go, oh my God, I can't believe you have granite countertops. Oh my God, I can't believe this is Sub-Zero. It's just like, ugh. It's like if they have
Don't forget the sconces.
Oh my God,
Don't forget the sconces.
And they have little cherubs, like little naked kids on them. It's amazing. Look at them. And so I think the thing is you need to start building excitement over things that the sellers know about the property that they're excited about. And by the way, I'm not pandering to them and talking about things that they love. They know the house better than me. They've been living in it for 20 years. I've been there for 10 minutes. So for me, I really value what the sellers love about the property. They more than anyone know why that house is great. So I started obviously building out that marketing profile. And then also when we understand the key features and I really understand the aesthetics that create the qualitative part of the value, right? Quantitative, price per square foot, qualitative, high ceilings, cool leather walls, like the crazy stuff that makes a house more valuable just because it looks cool. When you understand the qualitative aspect of it, when you sit down for that meeting and you think it's worth $2.5 million and they think it's worth $3.2 million, you have some data in the back of your head to go, all right, is this worth $700,000 in difference? Like are the naked cherub babies on the sconces like
really
actually
right?
And so anyways, so we walk the property, we sit down, I give them the big reveal that I'm not going to talk about the exact price. I'm going to give them ranges and we're going to talk in generalities, but I didn't bring comps.
Well, and two, but that is an opportunity to talk about the market in general. Like, this is the state of the market. In these price ranges, this is what the market's doing. So they can like resolve and start taking that price a lot more serious when you get to it. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're
I couldn't
totally
resist
right.
that. So
no, this is great, and I thirst for our collaboration. Like, I love it.
Oh, good. Okay, because I want to let you go, but I'd let So go. Yeah.
I'm gonna blather on anyway. So sit down, and essentially, what I've done is try to leave trails of success all throughout my listing booklet. And then I've tried to lead, I tried to logically walk people through the booklet. Mm-hmm. And what it allows me to do, if I went out the night before and didn't get enough sleep, if I didn't eat enough food before I went in there, if I had to pee the whole time during the listing appointment, if I was flustered and late and I got a big repair request, if my brain wasn't perfect that day, I have a listing booklet that is so paint by numbers, it makes it possible for me to be at 100% even if I'm not at 100%. And that's an important part. I think someone who goes in blind with a couple of pieces of paper stapled together without a clear written plan of how you're going to get through this meeting, you're just putting a lot of weight on your ability to be dynamic.
Now, I have a question for you. So, because I have a little bit of what you have. I have a basic presentation that I give them. And it's the same thing, though. I mean, like, but it's the same thing, but every seller's different and every property's different. So what is your formula? Obviously, you meet them. They are heard on the phone before you ever meet them. I'm sure they get a pre-listing package. Do they get a pre-listing package from you?
They do. The pre-listing package actually is my listing booklet.
Okay. So, and then they have that when you show up. So you deliver the listing booklet, you show up, they give you a tour of the home, and you don't talk about their fireplaces and their naked babies and their sconces.
Yeah.
But anyway, you get to the table. So now it's time. They've got the listing booklet, but of course they've already felt special because you've let them speak to the property, which has educated you. Right. But do you have anything else? I have so many different people. Obviously, I've heard a lot about. Yeah. At that point, is there anything you do? I guess what you're going to do to differentiate is what you've just absorbed in the tour. That's what you're going to say as you take them through that listing booklet. Is that right?
Exactly. And my listing booklet has an entire page just dedicated to photography. It has an entire page just dedicated to videography. It has an entire page just dedicated. These are giant pages. This is 17 by 13 inch pages that are specifically focused on topics that commonly come up. And so there's tons of pages in there that aren't going to relate to that particular property, right? If it's a studio condo, we're not going to do a video for it, right? You can't do a video of a place that's one room, right? So, but and so there's lots of detail. There's an entire page dedicated towards Matterport. But if the property is a beautiful home, but it's a fixer, we're not going to do a Matterport. We're going to take photos that are the best that we can get of the best angles of the best rooms that are still intact, and we're not going to show anything else. And so,
and do you touch on that when you go through the listing book? Like, this is Matterport. We're going to do this or not do this because of these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's important too. I think everyone sells differently, right? And so for me, I'm selling myself as a marketing partner. I'm not selling myself as the person that goes to every kickball game and knows everybody in the neighborhood. That's not my brand identity. And so, I don't try to go be all these things to everybody. And oh, you like lacrosse? Let me tell you a story that I have about lacrosse. Oh, you have a cat? I've touched a cat once. Like, I don't pander to people and try to be everything to them. Right. I just go in and I know what I am, and I just try to be the best at it as I can be. And what I think is really amazing is so many of these agents that struggle with this are like, I need to be able to do everything all at once and impress everybody. The reality is there's a million different ways to do our job.
Well, and there's two things about that. Number one, you don't have to have that much market share, even in Atlanta. I mean, San Diego is a much bigger market as far as price goes. But even in Atlanta, I'm like, you don't have to have that much market share to be a top agent. You just don't need that much. Just be really, everybody has this perception that they've got to go be everybody's friend and win the business of everybody they know, which not that we don't all aspire to that on some level, but on the real level, if you just be really good at what you're doing and attract the best clients, you're going to have the best business of anybody.